Right, to keep it brief, I'll just say our third paper is banks, images, and evidence from financial advertising. So
okay,
take it away.
And thank you for the organizers. Very happy to present my recent works on banks images, evidence from advertising videos. I'm Xugan from Yale, and this is joint work with Aaron from UBC and Song also from Yale. We know that banks actively advertise to communicate with customers and cultivate loyalty. This is partially because the core financial products that they provide, such as deposits and mortgages, are often perceived as fairly homogeneous. So banks are motivated to advertise and communicate about their advantages to customers. So this leads us to an open question. How do banks strategically build their brand images, and does it work? So in this paper, we use the financial advertising videos to study how banks communicate with customers. We asked two main research questions. First, how do banks strategically craft their images to boost their value? And second, what are the implications for the consumer demand, pricing, and monetary policy transmission? We use financial advertising as a setting because it is crucial for bank operation. On average, bank allocates 9.5% of their annual budgets to advertising. And our data, the advertising creative data, have 51,000 unique TV commercial video clips from 2,700 financial institutions. It has rich, dynamic, multimodal information. So in this paper, we developed a new methodology to extract those information. We combine the video embedding with unsupervised video cluster master to extract those information, which gives us three measures of bank images. The first one is pricing advantage, such as we give you the best price. Second is about service quality. We give you the best service. And the last one is about trust and emotion, where your best friend come here will bring the best life. And then with this measure, our first empirical path focuses on the market power, competition, and trust. We find that high local market share banks, they are going to focus on service and emotion. They are going to downplay pricing, perhaps because they do not offer competitive pricing. And when we respond to a fintech engine, incumbent banks shift to a service image focus, such as we have branch in discounting, or we have easy to use mobile app. And the last one, financial advertising, also tailored to local demographics and customer base. And the next part is about the demand and pricing. We find that financial advertising strongly impacts deposit quantity, spread, and loan origination. We used a border discontinuity design to identify the effect. And the last part, we linked financial advertising to the transmission of monetary policy. Our results are consistent with the notion of banks' deposit channel, and we argue that advertising could be one micro foundation for banks to maintain their market power and investing in franchise value. Okay, I will skip the literature and let's go to the data and the methodology. For the data, we are going to use Nielsen App Intel from 2003 to 2020. It has two parts of the data. The first part is the raw video data. We have those 51,000 unique video clips from 2,700 financial institutions. And the second part is the airtime schedules. We know which each video air when, where, and how much is spent. And then we link our data to standard banking and household finance data such as stimulus deposits, HAMDA, and so on and so forth. And then for the method, it is the video data. We need to analyze those data. So our goal is to measure the bank's image from those data. So we leverage the recent advantages in those AI to represent each video, the unstructured video data with 3,500 high-dimensional embeddings. And then it has all the rich information. And then we do dimension reduction, we do hierarchical algorithmic clustering to separate those information to different clusters. And then for each cluster, we're going to interpret it using the most frequent keywords, which gives us the three banks image measure: pricing, service, emotion, and trust. Okay, this is one visualization of our data. So we can see that pricing is there, service, emotion, and trust is there. So those measures self-emerge from the data. Let me give you one example. This is the advertising by Trace. So in the advertising, they say that everywhere convenience, everyday security, banker is here to help. And that person is using the mobile apps. So this is all about service quality. If we look at the distribution of the advertising thing, we can see that a significant part of image building efforts focus on trust and emotion. So this is consistent with the literature that they argue that financial advertising is more efficient to triggering customer emotion instead of providing new information. Before we go to the empirical results, I want to show you that what really drives the variation behind the financial advertising. So here I'm going to regress our measure on different sets of fixed facts to see the R-square. We find that it is not the product year fixed fact and not the county fixed fact explain the variation. Okay, it is the bank fixed facts, bank's year fixed facts, and bank county fixed facts. Together, they explain more than 50% of total variation. So in this sense, we can sort of interpret our bank image measure as one important dimension of bank heterogeneity. So this is we are going to explore in our next session. So we ask, how do financial advertising tell us about bank heterogeneity? We are going to use several important measures of bank heterogeneity in the literature to explain our measure. I'm going to separate consider deposits and lending business. The first one is market power, such an important and central topic in the literature. So this will help us to understand how image building efforts help banks to maintain their market power. Okay, here's the result. The results are quite straightforward. So in column 1, the deposit markets, and column 4, the mortgage markets. High market power banks do not talk about pricing. In second columns, in the deposits market, they are going to focus on the service quality. And the last column, now emotion and trust is more efficient in the mortgage market. The next question is about how do banks address their advertising to better connect with local demographics and customer base. So right now we are going to control a bank year fixed facts, which effectively we are comparing the actual rates in advertising across different counties for the same banks in the same years. The results show that, for example, in the county with larger black populations, banks are going to increase their black representation in the advertising. We find similar effects for Hispanics, for Haitian. We find similar effects for the deposit size and the asset size. How about response to competition, fintech entry? We find that when response to a fintech entry, incumbent banks respond by increasing their service-focused image, such as we have branch here, and we also have mobile app, we have online banking, and so on and so forth. And how about response to Wells Fargo scandal, which is a shock to the trust in the banking system? So we find that not only the Wells Fargo itself, but also other banks in the affected county also increase the trust measures to rebuild the connection with the customers. Our last part is about the real implication. We ask, how does advertising affect demand, pricing, and transmission of monetary policy? We know that advertising is endogenous to local economic condition, bank characteristics. So we are going to use this identification strategy called border discontinuity design introduced by the TV networks. So the key insight is that consumers on the two sides of the DMA border see different advertising because of the TV network, but they share similar characteristics and have similar product options. Let me show you an example. For example, in this narrowly defined areas, DMA border between Pittsburgh and Johnston, we are going to compare two consumers for the same banks in the same year. One city on the one side of the border, the other one city on the other side of the border. They have similar characteristics, but they see different advertising just because of this TV network. So this can help us to identify the effect. The first result is on the deposit flows and rates. We see that the first row, we see that advertising spending will increase deposit flows and allow banks to charge a higher deposit spread. How about bank images? Those banks that highlighting service, let's call them service banks, that have higher deposit flows and charge higher deposit spread, which means that they have higher franchise value and higher market power in this market. And we find similar result on the loan side. Financial advertising spending also increased loan origination. For the bank's images, now we find that those emotion and trust banks have higher loan demand because they have higher market power, as I just showed you before. The last part is try to connect bank's image with monetary policy cycle. Let's first look at the aggregate time series. We see that when Fed fund rate rises, banks do not talk about pricing. They use more and more survey and trust emotion in their advertising. And then to directly connect out the bank's image with monetary policy transmission, we use the standard empirical setting in the literature. So we interact with the change in Fed fund rate with a financial advertising measure, and we also control for the HSI, the market power measure, and its interaction. So we find that when Fed fund rate rises, banks with higher financial advertising spending will increase deposit spread more, and experience larger deposit outflow and larger balance sheet contraction. We find similar results for the bank's images. It is those service banks that have higher deposit spread and experience larger deposit outflow and balance sheet contraction. So this means this is consistent with the bank market power and deposit trend of the monetary policy transmission. Great, let me quickly conclude. In this paper, we asked how do banks strategically craft their images and what are the real implications for banking and monetary policy. So we analyzed 50,000 TV commercial video with AI techniques, and we established banks' image quantitatively. We have pricing, surveys, trust, and emotions. We find that banks establish good surveys and emotion connections to maintain their market power. They establish their images to cater to specific local demographic and customer base. And finally, we show that all these image building efforts can affect their product demand, pricing, and the transmission of monetary policy. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.